Maybe that was your word.
Okay, we're going to officially call this meeting to order at 4:01. We're running late already. I'm Steve Johnson. I'm the chairman of the Manatee County Commission and would like to welcome everybody here today. We have obviously a big crowd, and I've got to talk closer into the mic. Just a couple of housekeeping notes here. There is a sign-up sheet that hopefully will be coming either clockwise or counterclockwise for everybody to please sign in so that the recording secretary can make sure they get the names of everybody that was here. Secondly, we have a lot of people. There's about one mic for every 3 or 4 people, so if you're talking, please move that mic closest to you and feel free to share it back and forth. After each topic, as we go through the agenda, I will open it up for public comment. Excuse my back, but if you do have a public comment, it will be necessary for you to hike up to the podium up there to give your conversation to us, and you will have 3 minutes to talk. And with that, again, we've scheduled this from 4 to 6, 2 hours, so let's try to stay focused as we go through all that, because it is a big crowd and it's a fairly lengthy agenda. So I think with that, I will start and ask Sean Sullivan to come up and give us his report on the Tampa Bay resiliency. Can everybody hear me? I guess I have to keep moving this closer. So Sean, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, I was just going to introduce Sean. My name is Rob Brown with Manatee County Parks and Natural Resources. Sean Sullivan is the Executive Director of the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. And today he's going to talk about the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition. There's a memorandum of understanding that was shared throughout the entire region, and they had a signing ceremony on October the 8th with multiple jurisdictions present, and he'll go over a little bit about what that memorandum of understanding is all about. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Today, my name is Sean Sullivan. I'd like to talk to you briefly today about an initiative of the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, of our Regional Resiliency Coalition. Manatee County was one of the first governments in the region to vote to support a memorandum of understanding and to essentially join our coalition, and we're grateful. I'm told I have an accent, and by means of my accent, you might be able to tell who I'm rooting for on the Super Bowl Sunday. But so an overview, I'd like to give you, Mr. Chairman, an overview of the Regional Planning Council and then an introduction to the coalition today. The Regional Planning Council services 6 counties. We have 6 county governments: Manatee, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Hernando, Citrus, and Pasco. 21 municipalities, 13 gubernatorial appointees serve on our 40-member board, and we have 3 ex officios in SwiftMud, FDOT, and DEP. Covers 3.6 million people and 5,000 square miles. We began our 57th year as a regional planning council this January, and we're proud to be, we were the first RPC in the state of Florida 57 years ago. So we are, the benefits of a regional approach to resiliency we see as one region, one voice, advanced planning. We'd like to leverage resources, build capacity among our governments and our expertise, expand our expertise, broaden our partnerships, and increase innovation. And the 3 folks there you see, I know they're familiar folks to all of you, county commissioners and city government members, leaders, serve on our board. Resiliency planning for the Regional Planning Council really began back in 1985, and there are a number of studies that we have conducted over the years that really lay the groundwork for our resiliency initiative that began about 13 months ago. We did a report, an economic impact report back in 2016, 15, and it was an assessment We use what we call a REMI tool, that stands for Regional Economic Model, Inc. We take data, put it through the model, and it gives us results. And one of the things that this study particularly proved that if we do nothing by the year 2060, there could be $400 billion of property at risk in the Tampa Bay region by the end of the century. So our belief is that resiliency is interconnected and interdependent, really doesn't know county lines, it crosses county lines and jurisdiction. Transportation systems, infrastructure and water management, critical habitat and aquatic systems, communities and economies, and shared vulnerabilities. Now specifically about our initiative. This initiative began in January of 2018. It is the 18th such coalition of its type in the United States, so we're very proud of that. We have a model in South Florida, Southeast Florida that we can use, but we're very mindful of knowing that the Tampa Bay region is different. We are not Southeast Florida. So we need to perhaps use a model that's been established, but develop that model as we further integrate components of the Tampa Bay region and make this Tampa Bay's model. So back on October 8th, we had 25 member governments, county and city governments, Manatee County and the city of Palmetto being among them. And I might add that the city of Palmetto was the very first government in the region whose legislative body voted to join the coalition and support our memorandum of understanding, and Manatee County did so shortly thereafter. Since the meeting of October 8th, Mr. Chairman, we have had 2 additional governments vote to join the coalition and support the memorandum of understanding, so we're up to 27 member governments. Last week we had the PSTA, Public Transportation Authority, up in Pinellas County, voted to support by being a letter of support with a partner letter that we're developing. And we also presented to T-BARTA last Friday. They didn't take a vote yet, but I anticipate they will in the near future. So the structure and engagement of this initiative, TBRPC council members, mayors, managers, and/or commissioners really comprise our council. There's a steering committee comprised exclusively of elected officials who we rely on to help us set policy direction. And then we have an advisory committee comprised of scientists and interested parties. And we're continuing to develop the advisory committee as we move forward. And ultimately, we'd like to come up with a resiliency action plan for the Tampa Bay region. So also, we'd like to leverage expertise across the region. We figure that we face the same future and climate uncertainties. We share the same coastal vulnerabilities, and our economies are certainly tightly connected. And I might add, Mr. Chairman, we have purposely stayed away from the political discussion of climate change. We're focusing on the science. We also believe that this initiative will provide a formal platform for local governments to work together and create guidelines for the development of resilient communities, learn best practices from each other and from other regions, and leverage our regional resilience efforts to enhance funding and increase competitiveness for grant funds to help us further this effort. So the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Action Plan, which is one of our desired work products, will be to integrate climate adaptation and mitigation into existing systems through existing processes. And the focus areas are listed there. I won't necessarily read all of those, Mr. Chairman, but all of those areas are areas that we'd like to focus on. So our desired initial work products are, and I got to get a little closer, admittedly, my eyes aren't what they used to be. Sea level rise, vulnerability, and then the culmination would be the Regional Resiliency Action Plan. So what we like is a joint statement of regional collaboration, which our partners are our counties and cities, 27 of whom have legislative bodies have voted to support the Memorandum of Understanding in this initiative. We are now engaging our business community throughout the Tampa Bay region. Admittedly, that's in the infancy stages, but we have begun that component of our initiative. Economic development partners, we've talked to a number of economic development folks throughout the region to engage them and enlist their support. And then commitments, we'd like to engagement, as I mentioned, with the business community, joint state and federal advocacy groups. We've been in touch with our partners at FEMA and at the Economic Development Administration out of Washington, D.C. We have met with the previous governor's administration at DEP and sought their assistance when, in fact, Both the federal and the state governments have funded the TBRPC to do some initial resiliency work, which we're undertaking as we speak. And then we also believe that a regional outreach and communications is critical, and to speak to groups such as this will help us further the effort. So the next step, as we begin really year 2 of this extensive process, in 12 months' time, we were able to get 27 member governments to sign on to the Memorandum of Understanding. As we move forward with our year 2 of our initiative, the Regional Planning Council recently hired a young lady to help us manage this and become a leader with resiliency and lead our initiative. And Catherine Reynolds, she's in the audience with me tonight. Catherine is full-time employee of the RPC and will help and will be on this issue on a regular basis. Some of the topics would be sea level rise, risk reduction, economic resilience, energy-efficient buildings, transportation systems, as I mentioned, stormwater, water supply planning, and housing resilient redesign. Some of the products would be guidance documents, technical tools and toolkits, resources that could become available, sharing ideas, and then model language that each individual entity and community in our county would have the option to choose to adopt at your discretion. We respect that the sovereignty of our counties and cities. And then in October, we're looking to have a leadership summit where we are able to plan, to talk about, one, where we've come from, and then what the future holds for the Resiliency Coalition. I must say that we've had a degree of success in the last year. We're very proud of what we've done. We know we have a long way to go, and that we think one of our commissioners, Commissioner Long from Pinellas County, says that in Tampa Bay, we truly live in a region that is natural resources we preserve them and we take pride in them. And to do so takes great responsibility. And we would respectfully suggest that the responsible thing is to become a more resilient Tampa Bay. And we think with your support and the support of the initiative, we'll be able to do so. And Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean. I'm not sure how we're going to do this. Maybe raise your hand, given the size of the crowd, if you have any questions for Mr. Sullivan at this point. Ms. Baugh?
Sean, it's good to see you here
Thank you.
today. You know, you said something, and I've got a comment on it. It's not a political platform here that we're dealing with. I mean, this is something that every one of us need to take part in and work toward, because it is an issue. And I know in our meeting that we just had, I mentioned that I'd been going down to Miami for 20 years to jewelry shows every year. And now it's gotten to the point that when it's high tide, the roads in Miami and South Beach literally start flooding. So it is something that I think the state of Florida, our wonderful state, we need to look at and all work together to come to some solutions. And, I'm pretty proud to be on this committee. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming to this meeting where we're all here together. You're hitting 5 different municipalities as well as the county and our fire districts, almost all of them. So, it's a good meeting for you to be at, and we all need to really look into this and stand together to figure out some solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else at this time? If not, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. If there's anybody from the public that would like to address the crowd or have any questions for Mr. Sullivan, please feel free to do so now. Again, you have to hike up to the podium to get a microphone.
Oh, and the school board. Oops.
Seeing nobody, we'll close public comment, and we'll move on to number 2. Is Rob, are you? Oh, Nicole maybe is going to introduce Mr. Murphy to us.
Good afternoon. That is quite a hike from back there. Before we bring Jerry forward, I wanted to provide you with a little overview of the project, just some background. As a component of the post-disaster redevelopment plan update, a large selection of the county staff, consisting of employees from almost every department, are working on a collaboration with the University of Florida Resilient Communities Initiative and the University of South Florida College of Marine Science in leading the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council on a grant project. Big picture overview, the project seeks to assist local government with implementing the 2015 Parallel Flood Act into our comprehensive plans. And in order to support the 6-county region, Manatee County has committed to a county-wide effort for consistency with the parallel flood and improving resiliency. So here today is Jerry Murphy with University of Florida, and then he has also brought along Catherine Reynolds and with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council as part of the core team.
Thank you, Nicole. Mr. Chair, commissioners, councilmen, mayors, chiefs, it's good to see you all here today. Okay. So I'm here to talk briefly about the Parallel Flood Implementation Project that we're doing with the Regional Planning Council. This is our core team. These are some of the projections for what sea level rise is going to look like. These projections are changing on a regular basis if you're following the news at all. Not too long ago, the IPCC issued a report that said that the ice is melting faster than they had expected. Just recently, the 4th National Climate Assessment came out saying basically the same thing. So it's something of a moving target, but it appears to be moving in a more dangerous direction. So we need to be prepared for it. In 2015, the legislature passed the Parallel Flood legislation requiring that all local governments that have a coastal element in their comprehensive plan adopt criteria to satisfy the needs of addressing sea level rise, among other things, and the extreme flooding that comes from increasingly extreme weather. There are 6 major components. I have often said that the first 3 are the important ones, and the other 3 basically tell you what you have to do anyway. So I don't think they're nearly as important to focus on. So that our focus is on trying to move forward with the first 3. So earlier this year, well, in June of last year, I should say, the state published a Florida Adaptation Planning Guidebook, and it's one of the tools that we're utilizing as we go forward, working with Manatee County to see how the different tools that they've provided in this book work. So we have a team of staff working with the universities to see which of the tools are easier to access. The Adaptation Guidebook primarily provides a list. It doesn't really test them out, so we're testing them out. And we're finding some to be better than others. And we're utilizing those to do inundation mapping to show where areas are vulnerable so that we can then support vulnerability assessments, looking at infrastructure, looking at vulnerable populations, looking at possible environmental adaptations. Our overarching goals are to increase the government's ability to implement this parallel flood legislation and to support the Regional Resiliency Coalition efforts that Sean just talked about, and also to increase understanding and awareness among the population, all the stakeholders who are involved in moving forward as a community to address this impending circumstance. So 2 of the key focuses, the nature and social vulnerability. The nature is looking at opportunities to provide adaptation areas where natural vegetation can progress as the seas progress higher, and where there are opportunities in the event of vulnerable structures or buildings to see about how to look at policies for adapting those over time. In terms of the social and housing vulnerability, obviously there are areas that are vulnerable to the sea level rise on the coast, and some of these areas, the populations that are occupying those are more vulnerable than others. We have a number in west coast of Florida, a number of mobile home parks that are on the water, and they're going to become increasingly vulnerable to extreme events and also to sea level rise. So we're trying to identify where those areas are and also work with the community redevelopment agencies to see, or whatever the current term is. I think Manatee County has a TIF, doesn't have a community redevelopment area, but looking at opportunities for commercial areas to become more mixed use and thereby accommodate some of the folks who may have to abandon where they're currently living. So the key tasks that we're working on now, we're in the process of refining a best practices checklist. We're also developing webinars and workshops for folks to engage. We're trying to schedule one of those in February and developing a list of folks, subject matter experts that can help convey the message. We're going to hold those workshops on affordable housing and resiliency. And then ultimately, we're going to have a one-day workshop here, and it's going to be April 30th. We set a date just recently, April 30th of 2019. Basically an all-day event, I think, from 8 to 4. So we're hoping that you'll put that on your calendar, save the date, and make sure that you attend or have a representative here to see the work that we've done over the course of the last couple of months. So that workshop is going to look at the strategies to support local plans. So the county's taking the lead and providing opportunities for the municipalities to take a look at what they've done, see if they like it, see if they can adopt it. We're going to look at preparing RISE maps so that you can see visually where the inundation areas are and what the various aspects of vulnerability for infrastructure and for housing areas, for environment. The content and location planning for those workshops is underway, and we want to work closely with the cities now that the county has taken the lead, and as we go forward toward April, trying to make meetings to bring in the cities and work with them, find out what their unmet needs are. One of the things that we did early on in the project was a survey to see what those unmet needs are. Our survey responses were relatively good. They could be better, and we could learn more information about what those unmet needs are, but it seems that the largest unmet need that we identified in the Tampa Bay region is for vulnerability assessments. What are they? How do they work? How can we help with that? And so that's our primary focus. And then ultimately, save that date for April 30th, 2019, here at the Convention Center, and we look forward to seeing you there, and I'm happy to take any questions. And Catherine Reynolds is here too to help.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Any questions? Commissioner Benak with finding a microphone.
Yeah, just wondering about the timing for preparing these studies and the funding, where it's going to come from, because and I know we had a presentation at our board meeting, I think I asked a similar question then, but, where does the funding come from to do these kind of studies that are sea level rise maps, flood assessments? They're, pretty technical. And I know FEMA has not kept up with this kind of information, so I'm curious about timing and funding.
So the funding for this project comes from the Department of Environmental Protection of the state, and that's money that's ultimately, I believe, from NOAA. And that funds through our project. We're also getting support from your staff, helping us with some of the GIS work, the Geographic Information Systems, to do the mapping. And did I answer that?
Timing?
Timing. We expect to be done with our project in April in terms of the deliverables, other than the final report, and that's due, I think, in June to the Department of Environmental Protection. And that will be distributed, obviously, to all of you, at least in a digital version, so that you have the benefit of that. In terms of peril of flood implementation, all local governments are required to have addressed that by the time that their EAR is due to be adopted. That's your evaluation and appraisal report that's done every 7 years. Some local governments in the region are moving ahead of their EAR and going ahead to adopt the peril of flood legislation requirements and implementation ahead of that schedule, but by the time of your EAR, it is due.
Any other questions from anybody? In that case, we'll again open it up to the public. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak on this subject, please feel free to. Don't see any movement behind me, so I will assume that there's no public comment at this point. So with that, again, I'd like to thank Mr. Murphy and Mr. Sullivan for coming down and giving us this short presentation on an issue that's going to be very critical as we go on. And
Thank you for your
again, have a safe trip back. And I guess along this line, we'll now move to number 3, which is local government awareness and action plans for the effect of climate change on Manatee County. And I believe Charlie Kennedy's.
I'm here, Mr.
He's
Chair.
here somewhere. Oh, there he is.
I'm sitting right here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Friends and colleagues, here we are again, and we certainly, it looks like we have reached a tipping point when it comes into environmental issues and the vulnerability of our home. And I just want to take 1 second to thank Commissioner Baugh for her comments. This is not a partisan political issue. This is data and science, and this is something we have to deal with. And those were very wise words. As you can tell, we have a very collaborative team here. I'm just going to do the first introduction, and I'm going to step aside and listen and learn. But real quick, starting off is Manatee County resident and native, Mary Beth Bishop. And Mary Beth is going to come up and kind of talk from the personal perspective, and then I'll let Mary Beth introduce the team of experts who is following her. Thank you, everybody.
Good afternoon. As Mr. Kennedy said, I'm Mary Beth Bishop. I am a lifelong resident of Manatee County. I was born at Manatee Memorial Hospital, went to Manatee High School, and I can honestly say I've never been more hopeful about what we're facing than I have been today, seeing these these first three agenda items. I've worked in the field of sustainability for 10 years, and yeah, I'm just really glad to see what we're going to discuss today and what we have been discussing. Of course, there's a lot of work to do. There's a Chinese proverb that I've always really liked. It goes like this. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. So that's how I feel it's really relevant for climate change issues. We've known about them for a while, and yeah, there's still actions to be taken in terms of joining the Resiliency Coalition, and my group today is going to talk about a commitment to renewable energy. So without further delay, I would like to introduce Jim Willard with the Manatee Clean Energy Alliance, and Phil Compton from Sierra Club, Florida, and Tim Rummage from Ringling College. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Mary said, my name is Jim Willard, and I'm a member of the Manatee Clean Energy Alliance. We're a group of citizens that formed this alliance last year because of our concern about the impact of climate change on our community. I want to thank the Council for the opportunity to deliver our presentation entitled Awareness and Action Plans for the Effect of Climate Change on Manatee County. We all recognize our home in this slide. The difference is our planet, our spaceship Earth, if you will, is sending out a distress call due to the unprecedented global warming that not only results in accelerating sea level rise and stronger storms, but numerous other factors that can disrupt our lives and will be discussed. As mentioned, our alliance was formed because of our concern about the effects of climate change on Manatee County, and also by reports like this one that validated that concern. This slide shows the results of a study conducted by the consulting group 427, one of the leading authorities assessing the economic risk of climate change on business, financial, and governmental institutions worldwide. This study looked at cities and counties in our country that have the highest economic risk due to climate change. The left side of the slide shows the top 10 cities at economic risk, all in Florida, with Sarasota rated number 2 and Bradenton number 7. The right-hand slide shows the top 10 counties, 9 of which are in Florida, with Manatee number 1 out of 3,147 counties in the United States. Given this report and others we'll mention, we're going to touch on the following topics. Some of the documents we'll refer to are in the exhibits handout we've given you. These topics will be presented by Professor Tim Rummage of the Ringling College Department of Environmental Studies, Stephen Murphy, an Alliance member, and Phil Compton, Sierra Club's Senior Organizing Representative. At this time, I'd like Tim Rummage to step forward.
Thank you again for this opportunity. As I said, I'm Tim Rummage at Environmental Studies, Raymond College of Art and Design. The issue we're really talking about is greenhouse gases and fossil fuel emissions and how to get those under control again. Right now, at a global level, we're, come back. Here's the pointer. We're at 409 parts per million. This is what was the normal pattern of geological changes in ice and free zones, and when most of human civilization was developed. We were down in this area. Now we're here, and if I look at all greenhouse gases combined, we're up at 492 parts per million. 500 parts per million is considered the tipping point where we actually can't make any valid predictions as to what's going to happen, other than that it will be very, very bad. The fourth assessment program basically wanted us to make sure that we understood that the environmental conditions we have known and have grown up with are not anywhere near the environmental conditions we are going to see. Those conditions of our youth, our memories, those are gone. And the question is, can we hold at this level, or can we get some of those back if we're pretty smart about it? The greenhouse gases are not just carbon dioxide, but they also include methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated carbons. They all have different warming impacts, which is what the little multiplier number is by each of their category, if you want to have some idea. That basically it says that methane is about 21 times the heat trapping capacity of carbon dioxide. Nitrous oxide is over 310 parts the heat trapping of carbon dioxide. So each of these gases has very different play in what it means for us in the future. In some of the regional events we're expecting, even by 2050, we're looking at the prospect of about 50 to 60 more days of 95 and above by 2050, which is a huge change in comfort zone, in quality of life, and in agriculture. 17 of the last 18 years have been the hottest years on record. The last 5 years have been the hottest year on record. And unfortunately, the prediction already exists that 2019 is going to enter this column as one of the top 5. It's also going to be, 2019 is also projected to be one of the largest years for greenhouse gas releases in the world. These little circles just tell you where sort of heat is going to be. Mainly what you see is the fact that the projections through 2100 by U.S. Geological is just that it's going to get hotter. By 2030, we ought to be past where the IPCC wanted and the global economy wanted us to be, which is a 2 degrees Celsius rise. By 2100, we're up close to 5 degrees Celsius. Just in our area alone, if we don't do anything about greenhouse gases, by 2050, we're going to be about 2.5 degrees Celsius above. So this region will exceed the global projections of what we want to have happen. In the previous presentation, you were told that rate of sea level is changing and that this is not static. This graphic is simply about the change in ice melt in Antarctica. Basically, in the last few years from 1979 up through 2017, we have increased the rate of ice melt by 6 in Antarctica. Since we did this graphic, 2 reports have come out. One that says that Greenland is now melting at 4 times the rate that it was doing in 2003. And even this chart for Antarctica is not up to date. We now find that with meltwater, if you include that Antarctica is melting at 3 times faster than it was in 2012. So what that really means is, as you look at sea level rise projections, in the previous presentation they had a graphic from 2015 that talked about 7 feet. This is 2017 that was talking about 10 feet is the maximum for our area. Both of these are now completely out of date. What the ice data is telling us is that the box here, where we're going to shift from worrying about Greenland to worrying more about Antarctica, is going to shift down, and these lines are going to get higher and much faster. Okay? And overall, if we start thinking about what this impact is, it's not just about direct climate and sea level. It is also about a variety of health issues. It is about wildfires, droughts, agricultural systems. Basically, this is going to affect and touch almost every part of our way of life and quality of life as we currently know it and experience it. Even the World Economic Forum in Davos for the last several years has brought climate issues into their projections of what is the most likely or what is the most impactful change or risk to the global economy. And for the last several years, at least 60% of all the things they see as being a major trigger to downturns in the global economy deal with environmental issues related to climate change, sea level rise, and the release of greenhouse gases. More personally or more locally, the issue is simply we are going to have larger storms more frequently. We are going to see decay in overall biodiversity in our communities. We are going to have more sunny day flooding. We're going to have more overflows and rainy day floods. Allergies will go up. There will be all type of health issues. And not only will they increase dramatically, but the pollen will be even stickier and more bothersome than the pollen that we're dealing with now. The other issues we're going to see is as climate changes, we are going to create new places for tropical diseases and other nasty diseases to hang out. And so things that have stayed away from us because we weren't in their environment, we are now creating a zone where they can be here because we've adopted their environment. So basically what we're talking about here with global risk functionally is that the main thing here is that we can't handle or deal with these issues sequentially or in isolation. They are integrated problems and they have to be solved in an integrated fashion. And so what we really need to do is look at the cascading issues that happen, because when the things start to collapse, they will collapse quickly and quite painfully. And while we've already talked about the warming that's going to be taking place and the need to decrease the emissions, people get concerned about the price. What I want to point out is the International Panel for Climate Change says to meet the current goal, we're going to have to spend about 2.5% of the global domestic product. The International Monetary Fund says we already are, but we're spending it on the things that cause greenhouse gas emissions. We just have to switch subsidizing the bad stuff for subsidizing the good stuff. But since we are ultimately the cause of the issues, the way humanity acts, the things we do, the gases we release, the really good news is we're in an excellent position to be the solution to these problems. Okay? And for those, let me turn over to Stephen Murphy.
Thank you, Dr. Rummage, for this overview, and also thank you for pointing out that we have the solution to the problems. One of the things that has always concerned me in the past was I didn't know how we were going to get out of this, but technology and other things have been changing so rapidly that we can. So how are we going to get out of this? Well, there are 4 ways that we can get out of the situation we're in. Mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, climate justice, and promoting citizen action. I want to focus on mitigation. But before I do, I really want to thank the county for its decision to join the Climate Tampa Bay Resiliency Coalition, and I want to thank both the county and all the municipalities because as I moved back here 2 years ago, I have noticed that the county and the municipalities are doing things to inform the citizenry regarding the challenges that they face and what we can do to mitigate those challenges regarding the environment. So, in terms of mitigation, we can get more of our energy from solar by supporting citizens going solar and having the county and municipalities do so as well. We can budget for electric vehicles and electric charging stations, and we can look at using some of the money. There's $160-some million that's in the state of Florida that came from the Volkswagen settlement on diesel pollution. So that money is available for electric buses, both for schools and for municipalities, as well. 25 million of this $166 million has been set aside for electric charging stations. The county and the municipalities can look at the efficiency of their buildings. They can develop establish green building codes, which will reduce our carbon footprint. And more importantly, they are cheaper over the lifetime use of the building. That's a critical thing to understand. I just went solar, and I'm spending less now than I would had I stayed with FPL. We also strongly encourage the county and the cities to join together to fund a climate mitigation and adaptation position, which could focus on all of the work required to develop a plan to deal with the issues related to the changing environment. So there you see, we have enough solar energy reaches Earth every hour. So I am confident that we can figure out ways to utilize that solar energy to provide most of our energy. And every day we see new ways to use energy and store energy economically. Every day there's been more and more breakthroughs. Florida is third in the nation in rooftop solar potential, but only 14th in the amount of solar energy generated. We need to do better than that. Just last year, 234 of our residents joined a solar co-op in Manatee County. And of those 234, 70 homes put solar on their roofs last year through that co-op at a very competitive price. It was, I can't say what it was, but it's the cheapest I've ever seen solar energy produced for. And another really hopeful sign is global electric car production. Now, we only have data that shows it from 2010 through 2016, but I've been looking at data around when will electric cars cost less than a gasoline car? And that date is much sooner than you would expect. By 2025, the cost of purchasing an electric car, which hopefully you'll power from the solar energy on your house, will be cheaper than a gasoline engine. So as you can see, and also, just as a note, I read last night that they hope the average range of electric cars by 2025 will be around 350 miles per charge. So that really takes care of the issue of range anxiety, which people have. So as you can see, things are moving in the right direction, and we need to update our codes and regulations to support the move to a carbon neutral environment. I would now like to introduce Phil Compton from the Sierra Club, who will discuss how you can join with others to make this happen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is wonderful for us, despite all this gloom and doom, to be at a point where we realize that we can not only just take action to be more resilient to the coming impact of climate change, but we can do something about it. What's the difference? One is building your seawall. The other is doing what you can do to make it not as high as maybe it would be otherwise. Because we know, you've heard plenty today, that sea level rise is happening much more quickly than anyone thought anywhere it would happen. But there are other reasons for doing it too. How about if we just clean up the air? I work with cities all over the state of Florida and counties who have made commitments or are planning to make commitments to a 100% clean energy future. There are now 105 cities in the United States, 11 counties, 2 states, and we expect by this year there'll be 7 other states to join California and Hawaii and lots of other cities. Here in Florida, we have St. Petersburg, Sarasota, Dunedin, Largo, Gainesville, and Orlando. So you have large, medium-sized, and small cities who have all made a commitment, and they're doing their planning. Some of this planning has been going on for 2 years. What they're doing is they're planning how they're going to implement energy efficiency first in their municipal buildings, making that available to the community as a whole, adopting new technology, looking at long-term investments, saving tax dollars by making buildings energy efficient, electrifying their city fleets so that they eliminate much of their maintenance and fuel cost, reducing demand, and then meeting that demand more efficiently, more effectively with clean technology. It is a wonderful thing that this technology is now here. You can adopt a lot of it today, and what is not here right now, such as a fire truck that runs on electricity, will be here very soon. And when I speak of fire trucks and vehicles, you should know it's not just about making solar power how we get our electricity. Transportation creates as much of the greenhouse gases, much of the smog that affects our kids with asthma, our seniors with COPD, as anything else, as electricity, as the utilities do. And we work with Duke Energy, Florida Power and Light, and the other utilities to promote electrification. In fact, the other day, St. Petersburg, and this is Largo, cut the ribbon on new charging stations that Duke Energy is installing 500 in their service area right now. As was mentioned, the Volkswagen funds of $166 million, you'll be able to apply for those funds for your city to have your own electric charging stations. The school board can apply for funds to buy your first electric school buses. And in St. Petersburg, just up the road over the bridge, there are 2 electric buses running, clean, quiet, zero-emission electric buses that save money, that cost a couple of $100,000 less over the lifetime of that bus when you consider all costs, including the purchase price. This is not science fiction. This is here now. So the opportunity and challenge is for us to plan how we are going to adopt the new technology to save taxpayers' dollars and to reduce the threat of climate change. And Jim Willard is going to tell you a bit more about that.
Thank you, Phil. Today, I hope we've reinforced the reality of climate change and highlighted some of the strategies urgently needed to address it. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change indicates we have 12 years to reduce our fossil fuel emissions to avoid increased catastrophic events and even irreversible climate change. We have the opportunity to be a leader in tackling this global issue locally. Our challenge is having the political and corporate will and vision to do so. My wife recently read a quote to me from the editor of Vanity Fair magazine. I think it's a very appropriate quote. The difference between us and the dinosaurs is that we can see our fate coming and have the power to change it. Our Alliance looks forward to meeting with many of you in the near future and introducing additional resources that can assist in developing strategies that preserve the health and safety of our citizens and our economy. We thank you for your attention. I'll turn this over to Diana.
Good afternoon. I'm the closer. I'm Diana Robinson. I'm actually the energy manager in Manatee County. I also chair the Green Team, and most of you should know that we, with the Florida Green Building Coalition, were the first and only Platinum County. So we are doing good things, but we definitely need to do more. I've had the distinct pleasure to work with each of these groups that have already spoken today. The Memorandum of Understanding signing at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Commission office was truly historic. When do we see multiple counties, towns, and cities come together to sign an agreement to collaborate regionally to combat important issues that we are facing in our community, state, and country? Sure, we can meet and discuss, copy, implement best practices, but the MOU specifically addresses extreme flooding, sea level rise to climate change, and we are all concerned about the future of our properties, infrastructure, and livelihood. Jerry Murphy shared information with you about a grant that was awarded to the TBRPC, the Planning Commission, in partnership with the University of South Florida in Florida, which gives focus to regional efforts to address everyone's concerns. We are quite proud that Manatee County will be the focus for creating those models to be used for our neighboring municipalities for identifying what we can do regionally to become more resilient. Finally, to be successful, you should always involve organizations, businesses, community. and civic groups, which brings me to this last presentation. Did you see and feel the passion of this brilliant group? I certainly did. Our school district, the Manatee Alliance for Clean Energy, local universities, Sierra Club, businesses, many others in the community and within our governments do need to partner, when possible, work together to create solutions that reduce redundancy. We want to streamline processes and increase efficiency. So come to that workshop on April 30th, get involved, contact me, and we look forward to working with each of you to address all these things that were discussed today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. Any questions? Carol?
Well, what's important today is the science is in front of us. Some people may not agree with it, but we have too much science not to ignore it. We can choose to ignore all this, put our heads in the sand, or we can deal with it. And I think with all this being at the top of our agenda today goes a lot, because that wouldn't have happened a few years ago. I really, and I'm glad you brought up what the county has been doing. The chiller plant in the city of Bradenton. We actually keep a dashboard report every month on our energy use and how it's gone down through the years. I have a friend, the Thrashers in Bradenton, that they're the second home in Manatee County that's fully supported by solar panels, by the Tesla battery. They have a Tesla car that gets charged from the energy from the house on the solar panels. And it just got approved, and now they're working totally on solar. So I think we're making great strides, but we have the science in front of us, and I think we all need to take this back to our individual governments and work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Reverend?
Thank you very much. It was gratifying to hear the school board finally enunciated as one of the partners in this process at the end of this presentation. The question that I have is, first, whether or not there is, as I believe, a linkage between the flooding problem that was outlined in agenda items 1 and 2 and the action plans for climate change that's outlined in number 3. Now, those are 2 rhetorical questions, because the actual question that I really want to ask is, and I want to follow up on what Mrs. Whitmore alluded to and what Mrs. Bow specifically addressed. Our climate change problems are not political problems. They are real, and the science is here. The question that I have is, how can the school board of Manatee County, which is at the top of the list of all of the counties in the world impacted by climate change and flooding, how can we begin to teach the 49,000 kids in this county about this science and the need to remove it from the realm of the political and into the realm of that which constitutes proper education for living in this part of the state? How do we help? Because it's good to come to the meetings after school and in the evenings and on Saturdays, but if I'm doing that and my kid doesn't know what I'm doing or why, we're right back where we started from 20 years from now.
Some schools have solar panels on campus. We would love to see Manatee School District obtain the Volkswagen funds and buy their first electric school buses, so kids could go to school in a clean, quiet ride that doesn't blow diesel smoke in their face and cause problems for the 1 in 10 children who now have asthma. So that's one practical thing that they could do, hopefully in the next year or so.
So you don't think curriculum has anything to do?
Oh, no, absolutely curriculum. Yes, sir, absolutely. But you can demonstrate it, and the kids can live it that way.
And just to follow up on that, I agree wholeheartedly that we need to teach our kids about climate change. We don't need to instill fear of them. They need to know the facts because it's their future. And I've talked to Charlie about this, and he intends to talk with the superintendent of the schools to see what we can do to make inroads into the schools, maybe through clubs, through honor societies, through various groups there where we can get in and start this process so the kids are educated. It's, if the kids know what the issue is, the parents are going to find out too. And the parents are going to call our government officials and ask, what are we doing? And as you can see, there's a lot that we must do in light of the facts that you've heard today. So I appreciate that question.
I'm going to add one more component to the answer. We've talked about working cooperatively and collaboratively, and I think within the schools we need to do that as well. So, for example, say you have this year's 4th grade class go out and do a seine netting along the shore and see what fish they catch. Okay? That data has to be available to next year's 4th grade class, to the year after that's 4th grade class, so they themselves can see, as each 4th grade class does this over the next 4 or 5 years, what the change happens to be, that it's real in their area. We can do all kinds of studies of just high tide measurements, but again, we have to keep it, as scientists do, as a data log that's open and available to all the other potential users, so that the story doesn't become, oh, I got this one piece of data today, and I'm never going to see it again, but it becomes a completely shared cooperative arrangement within the various schools. And so I think that's one of the ways to do it. And one of my favorite demonstrations of ocean acidification was done by a British colleague of mine. And he went out, collected seawater in front of everybody, in a big glass vase, put it in front of people, and then to show what happens with too much CO2, he took just a small piece of dry ice and dropped it in that tank. And as the dry ice evaporated, you could see the color in the ocean change as the water reacted with the new carbon dioxide that was in there, and you can measure the change in what the acid level was before you put the cube in and afterwards. And so again, there's just a living demonstration of this is what is happening. And then the question is that what you want to have happen? And if it's not, what are the options? So, my thoughts.
Anybody else? Misty?
Just very quickly, I want to thank the Regional Planning Council for organizing all of this and our panel of speakers. You guys did a phenomenal job. I really appreciate not only that you're here, but the attendance of everyone here, because the way that we figure out these big problems is through collaboration. It's the only way that we can tackle big, tough issues. And I agree with Mary Beth that I am today really excited about the direction that everyone's talking about moving in. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, if not, we'll open it up to public comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the audience with their thoughts? Again, seeing nobody from the public, again, thank you all for coming. I think it's something that's getting a lot of traction now. We're reading about it more and more, and we can certainly see the dire effects on the whole world if we don't start taking some positive steps to, convert ourselves over to more solar energy and so forth. So thank you all for coming. The next item is the Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Brownwind, I think. And I'll butcher your last name. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about not only grade level reading, but Alice in our community and United Way. And what a beautiful subject to kind of dovetail right in, talking about climate change and the future that we want to create for our children. Campaign for Grade Level Reading is right in there with that. And I love the idea of possibilities and how we have the solutions when we come together. So United Way believes that every person deserves equitable access to the opportunities to create the life they imagine for themselves. And we act on that belief by partnering with businesses, nonprofits, government, media, and community to address complex issues that no one organization or person can address alone, such as 50% of our children not reading on grade level by 4th grade, and ALICE families who are struggling, working hard every day, but struggling to make ends meet and create a nest to provide for their future. And we fight for the education and financial stability of every person. Over our near-century history, United Way has been recognized as a leader in innovation and vision, and our priority areas are focused on what people need to reach their highest potential, changing the underlying community conditions that hold us back, and creating pathways for families to succeed. The way we go about this is in community leadership. We're a convener, we're an activator, and we're an investor. And our priorities are education and ALICE, individuals and families, investing in a variety of ways in neighborhoods through place-based and in neighborhoods meeting our families where they are. So who is ALICE? 5 years ago, United Ways of Florida entered into an unprecedented partnership, combining our resources to invest in a study that was done in the northern New Jersey and was already changing how we see working families and individuals. The impact of this report has been profound on our community, but now nationally as the ALICE report has spread, to help us understand families that are working hard and struggling to make ends meet. You may have even noticed the ALICE report being referred to in the gubernatorial debates in the state of Florida, and also nationally. ALICE has been a big part of the conversation. And in Manatee County, we're talking about almost 150,000 people. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Carolyn Griffin, who is our Director of Strategic Impact, to talk a little bit more about ALICE.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Good afternoon. So, who is ALICE, or what is ALICE? ALICE is an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. But ALICE is more than an acronym. ALICE is the person who's your child's preschool teacher. Alice is the barber who cut your hair last night. Alice is the person who served your meal at the restaurant. And unless you were born wealthy or married into wealth, you may have been Alice at one point in your life. And certainly your children might be Alice. The new ALICE report will be released next week, but until then, the data that I'm talking about is, I think the word they use is embargoed, so it's top secret, and we're giving you a sneak preview. But let's talk about who is ALICE in Manatee County. As Bronwyn mentioned, we have almost 145,000 households in our community who are ALICE. They're either living in poverty or in ALICE. In 2016, 11% of the 142,000 households were living in poverty, and an additional 33% lived above the poverty line, but they're still struggling to get by. So to put it in a different perspective, you think about you have a 40-hour-a-week job. You're working full-time. You have a college education. And if you have an unexpected emergency, you have no savings to go back on. That's the life of ALICE. I would love to be invited back to talk with you when we get the new report, to give you as much information as you would like. So Bronwyn, I don't think I was supposed to do that. How about that? Okay, this is what I wanted. Sorry. So as our work in United Way focus on education, and Bronwyn is going to talk more about that, but if you look at this slide, so what you're seeing is obviously, or at least as you might expect, if you're married, the numbers in Alice are lower for married couples. But if you look at single families headed by a woman, 37% of those households are living in poverty, and another 40% is living just above. I was also shocked at the number of single-family households headed by men. The number is still significantly lower, or the percentage is still significantly lower than women, but I think it's pretty impressive or interesting nonetheless. So 28% of that 148,000 households are headed by males. So you might ask, why do we have so many Alice people in our community? And I'd like for you to take a look at the slide on private sector employment. And the answer is pretty simple. Most of the jobs in the state of Florida are associated with the lower paying service sector. And that's true especially in Manatee County. Most jobs in the state pay less than $20 an hour. And of that percentage, most of those jobs are less than $15 per hour. And according to the household survival budget, we need $58,000 for an adult, two adults, one preschooler, and one infant. The household survival budget for a single adult is $22,236. And when I talk about the household survival budget, I'm not talking about amenities. I'm not talking about nights out, eating out, or going to a theater or to a sporting event. Those numbers include the bare minimum cost of housing, childcare, food, transportation, and health care. And when I say health care, please note that I'm not talking about insurance premiums. I'm talking about the penalty that was previously part of the Affordable Care Act. It also does not include savings, meaning the Alice population has no cushion for emergencies. So what are we at United Way doing to help Alice? In Manatee County, we are partnering with Step Up Suncoast, a partner agency, to provide free income tax preparations for households making less than $66,000. Skip down to the FAFSA, that's the free application for federal student aid. We also are part of a coalition working with Manatee Community Foundation, United Way Suncoast, and Career Suncoast are working on helping students complete the application for free student aid. The other items are all products that are mainly given in our northern markets, Hillsborough and Pinellas counties. But they're all pieces of a big puzzle to work to help Alice. Thank you.
In addition to Alice, 4 years ago, the United Way adopted a policy of turning outward. We reached out to community and had more than 400 conversations from community members from all walks of life. And we asked one question: what are your aspirations for your community? We didn't say we were going to try to solve anything. We just wanted to know. And the overwhelming response: one is safety. We want to live in a safe community. But number two is we want equitable access to quality education for our children. wherever we are. And that's why United Way decided to bring the campaign for grade level reading to Manatee County, along with a community stakeholder coalition of 40 leaders in our community. The campaign for grade level reading is a national movement with almost 400 communities now. So even this slide, every day there are more communities that join. More than 60 United Ways lead campaign for grade level readings movements in their communities. And the campaign for grade level reading movement focuses on areas that are actionable but broad in scope. So making sure our children attend school every day, making sure our children are ready for school, making sure that there are quality learning experiences out of school and especially during the summer. And we wrap all of that in making sure that our children have access to health care and parent engagement, parent-family engagement. If you think back to 4 years ago, how many of you can remember us talking at a community level about the fact that half of our children aren't reading on grade level? We were doing many things, and we were doing many things separately and very well. But 4 years ago is the first time we came together and we said we're going to do this as a community. And we're all going to play our part. And we're all going to bring our possibilities. And we're all going to bring our vision and our best efforts. The Suncoast campaign for grade level reading, just doing some level setting here because you'll hear different ways of referring to the campaign, is a recognition by the Patterson Foundation, who was working at an enterprise level with the campaign at the time. And they recognized the leadership in Manatee, and they recognized the leadership in Sarasota, and they asked if we wanted to join together, to work on solutions together. And the Patterson Foundation would work to add velocity to anything that we did. So you have the Manatee, led by United Way Suncoast, and Sarasota, led by the Community Foundation of Sarasota. And in this past year, we've added Charlotte County and DeSoto. So momentum is building, and you now have a four-community region with the Suncoast campaign for grade level reading, but still a lot of action going on and deep dives going on in Manatee County, and we're getting to that. The Suncoast campaign, from its inception now, it's been 4 years, we've won awards for the work that we've been doing over the past 4 years. I say that not because it's an awesome thing to win awards, but it's an awesome thing to be able to talk about the progress we're making for our children. And one of those awards that is especially meaningful for Sarasota and Manatee is an All-America Cities Award. Only 8 of those are given each year. We received one, and we were the first 2 communities to receive one as a dual community. That's how this work and how the impression that we're making on our colleagues nationally. So again, as I've said, these are the goals and the focus areas of the campaign. But what does that mean for us? In Manatee County, we are united, and we don't do anything alone, and we bring our best players to the table. Actually, they kind of marched up very willingly with all kinds of leadership. So we have our school district of Manatee County, Manatee County Government, Manatee County Community Foundation, and the Early Learning Coalition of Manatee County. But a few months ago, we asked ourselves, we've seen incremental progress, and that's a good thing. But we asked ourselves, what can we do better? What do we need to know in order to go deeper into this work? Are incremental results enough? How can we reach our milestones more quickly? So the superintendent and I were in a meeting. I hope it's okay if I talk a little bit about that meeting. And just since I have the podium, I would also like to thank you for the openness that the school district has shown in working with community, allowing us in, sharing data that is able to be shared, and innovating with us. We don't find that across the United States with all the campaigns for grade level reading, and I want to make sure that our community doesn't take it for granted. The same with our county government and our other 2 leadership organizations. So I do want to point that out. But I asked Superintendent Saunders, what can we do? Because the tendency is to say our children can't read on grade level. What are our schools doing? The real question is, what is our community doing? And how are we delivering our children to school? Are they ready? Do we have a concerted effort from 0 to 5 that's aligned, that ensures that every child gets that equitable access to quality education? So when we looked at the data and we saw that 50% of our children were not on grade level, and I talked to Superintendent Saunders and she mentioned 10 schools in 3 neighborhoods, high population of Alice that we mentioned, but low mobility, so that if we were to work with our neighborhoods, we would find that our children weren't leaving and they could have the same access to education in these 10 schools. We thought we'd hit upon something. And then we learned that county government was focused in these 3 areas. And then we learned that our Early Learning Coalition now had a grant from county government to track our children and find where they were, their progress in early learning environments. And an idea was born. For now, it's called the Big Plan. And we don't know if we'll change the name, but we kind of like it. It's a little funky and a little different, and it is a big plan. It's ambitious. When you have targets that are as important as making sure that all of our children read on grade level, your plans have to be pretty doggone big. So the neighborhoods that we're looking at the moment are, actually, I'm sorry, I will not take the thunder from my colleague, Cindy Cavallero Day. She is our Director of Grade Level Reading Strategies, and she'll talk a little bit about the big plan.
Good afternoon. It's kind of like somebody turned off the AC in the classroom at this hour, but thank you for your time. I'm Cindy Cavallero Day, and truly the focus and the purpose of really having a collective impact from so many agencies. A total of 40 agencies will be involved that are nonprofits with direct service, as well as our lead agencies, as Bronwyn mentioned earlier, including Manatee County Government, the School District, ELC, Manatee Community Foundation. So when we look at the target neighborhoods, we really looked at what can we do as a community to understand first where we've been, what have we done, and where are we going. So the questions came upon us when we look at partnering and being really helping the school district with their goals and ambition, and with agencies that truly focus on the 5 pillars of the campaign. We targeted communities based on feedback that really have Title I schools who chronically have underperformed, but also we're looking at neighborhoods surrounding the communities. Right now, a child in elementary school is awake about 6,000 hours a year. 1,000 of those hours are spent in school. The rest of the time is out of school time. So when we look at quality school out of time and enhancing the resources we presently have, we're looking at a quality enhancement approach to programs that potentially that do exist in our community, truly targeting the early education, after school, and also the summer learning enrichment programs. And right now the partnerships, and earlier with the climate change, it's so connected between education and what's happening in our world right now. Just recently came back from a conference, and nationally 40% of the absences that happen in our country are due to asthma in children. It's staggering. Here we are doing our best efforts to get children to school every day when they're hit with environmental factors. So as we're looking at the neighborhoods right now, the approach we are taking is creating a full a full map, working together with county government, with 5 departments within county government, and also 6 departments within the Manatee County School District. And what I love about this map, you'll see they're highlighted in different colors. The red are our D-performing schools, and the orange are the Cs, and the yellows are, no, backwards. Orange are the Cs and the Ds. It's hard to see from this angle. But truly looking at the schools and the neighborhood approach, like how do we approach this as a community? How do we reach the children where they are? The truth is every parent wants the best for their child. Every parent wants their child to succeed. But every parent needs support services, especially with 70% of our households being led by single parents. We have to redirect our resources and our scope of work to truly surround the families where they are and meet them with resources that truly encourage success. Right now we know the goal of the campaign and the goal as a society is to have all our children reading by the end of 3rd grade. The children reading by the end of the 3rd grade are 4 times more likely to graduate high school and finally be prepared for their career and college readiness. Right now, if you look at the opposite of that, the statistics are staggering. Right now, high school dropouts, they account for 80% of our subsidized funding. Each child that doesn't graduate high school will cost the economy $292,000 in supports, where a child who graduates high school will actually contribute back some tax contributions to the community over $300,000 over their lifetime. So it's a big disparity. So the importance and the essence, this is our future workforce that we're fighting for, and its steps and its collaboration. And I just want to applaud every agency in the room who is working towards this goal of creating this GIS map throughout the county, because we are going to actually elevate the quality of the programs we're offering out of school for children, supporting the vision and the mission of the school district, and doing it in a very, very strong collaborative way. It's truly a time where I've seen honest data, honest feedback. What can we do better? Let's start now and plan for the next 10 years. So I will turn it back over to Bronwyn.
We have a few statistics that are in your pamphlet there I don't really need to go over. I think we get the idea. But the most important part of this presentation is you. It's how do we work together? What can we imagine together? Don't get stymied by the magnitude of the challenge, because I think that what that does is that lays a foundation and it gives us the ability to, okay, now we know what we have in hand, and it drives innovation. And that's what we can do together. We can build off of one another. We can learn from one another. So as the big plan begins to develop, we've been particularly not too many details on that yet because we're building it with community. But those focus areas are solid just because of the partnerships and how we believe we can have an impact on our children. And when you look at these 3 areas, right now we're defining as North River, Palmetto, downtown, and West Samoset. 2 out of every 3 children can't read on grade level by the time they reach 4th grade. This isn't about reading. It's about our democracy, and it's about our ability to invest and guide our own lives in the way that we see fit. It's perfectly aligned with the mission of United Way and very aligned with how this community sees its future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience? Seeing none, we'll then open it up for public comment. Anybody from the public that would like to come forward and talk about the report? Seeing nobody, we'll close that. Again, thank you. Personally, I'll be curious to see how the new Alice report looks compared to the last one. And, let's hope there's some improvement, but who knows? I guess we'll find out pretty soon. Next item on the agenda is the 2018 Annual Interlocal Agreement for Public School Facilities, Planning Assessment, and I see Amy up there ready to go.
Good afternoon. Good evening, or good afternoon. How many people were happy that their cars had seat warmers this morning? It was pretty cold. Does anyone know why we have an interlocal agreement for public school facilities planning? Exactly. In 2002, our state legislation created a new law requiring school districts to enter into an interlocal agreement with all of their local governments. Our first agreement was in 2003. We amended it again in 2008, and the last amendment was in 2010. We have not updated it for the major changes to growth management that happened in 2011, which a lot of you know about, but we are acting in accordance with that law. There are 6 parties to the interlocal agreement: the school district, the city of Bradenton, city of Holmes Beach, city of Palmetto, Manatee County government, and the town of Longboat Key. All governing boards had to agree and adopt this interlocal agreement and the policies and procedures within it. There is a team of people that put this interlocal agreement together and that keep maintaining this agreement. We have staff from each local government who meets annually to put together the assessment I'm about to present to you today. I want to thank them for their time and their effort. There is a lot of it that goes into it from your staff to do what we're doing in this interlocal agreement. In front of you, I gave you a couple of things. You have the assessment in written form. I will not be going through this page by page, so you're not going to be able to follow me through this. I will be giving you some brief highlights, providing recommendations from the staff working group in regards to our interlocal agreement. You also have a little note-taking thing from my PowerPoint, so you can follow along with this. In fact, I think we're already on page 2, so look at us go. All right, the interlocal agreement has 5 key concepts. The first is we share data with each other. The school district shares their capital plans. The local governments share the capital plans with the school district. The school district provides our student projections. The local governments provide us with their population projections. As far as these sections go, it's been working really well. There's just some small housekeeping, like the dates that we actually do. These things are a little different. The school district doesn't get their population projections from the Department of Education till July, but our interlocal agreement asks to exchange this stuff in March. So it's just a little housekeeping things that need to be changed in this section. In regards to our second concept, school concurrency, we are required to ensure that school capacity is available or will be available for proposed developments. We have established 4 school service areas in which we analyze whether or not school capacity is available. We've also adopted level of service standards by our school types. We have not triggered proportionate share mitigation, and this occurs when a development would exceed that level of service that we've all agreed on. Our school concurrency management system has been working really well in helping us plan for where we need to place schools. As a recommendation, and these are ones you might have heard before, the school district needs to update the break-even point. How many students do we need to warrant the need for a new school operationally? You know, how many students do we need to be able to afford a principal, run the AC, have a janitor? What is that number? We did it when we first put this interlocal agreement together in 2007. I can guarantee that number has changed. At this time, we have no plans to change the 4 service areas or the level of service that we have adopted. The third component of the interlocal agreement is the development application review process. It has been working really well. The local governments provide the school district with their residential and non-residential applications. We actually look at all of them. I have a password into Acela, so I can go in there. I used to go into Buzzsaw. I was able to go to the trainings. The county did a great job allowing me to go to some of those. I get them in emails. I get them in Dropboxes. I get them in hard copies. You know, all the local governments provide them in a different way. The school district then uses this information to prepare what we call a school report. In the school report, we identify the impacts to our educational facilities, and you'll see some of that later. Basically, we keep a tracking system of all these residential developments. I call it the monster. The name's kind of caught on. The local governments call it that too, because each year I sent it out to the local governments and they review it to make sure, one, I have included all the residential applications. I may have missed some. There's a lot that come to us. They make sure that I have the correct number of dwelling units in there by type. They make sure that basically that The dates of approval are in there because I can't really follow all of your meetings to watch when they get approved, so they update those. And most importantly, they update the number of certificate of occupancy, because at that point, I'm able to pull that out. I'm saying once there's a CO, I'm counting that there's a family living in there, even though they might not be, but that's when we open up that capacity and take them out of our concurrency calculation. At this point, the staff working group recommends that the school district provides more timely reports, which is me, and so that they can go to the pre-application meetings and have these reports for the development review committee meetings. And of course, certainly have them in the packets to go to the planning commission meetings and to the governing board meetings, because the whole point of the school report is to help you make your land use decision making on these applications that are coming through, to provide you that information. The tracking system, the monster. We have talked about trying to automate it. It really should be in a database. I would love to see it open to the public, to the local governments. You could go in there, you could type in, I'm going to build 1,000 dwelling units of this type, and it would run all the numbers. But someone asked why we haven't done this, and the last time I said this, and it's just IT staff. I mean, someone to create something out of nothing. I meet with planners around the state. Hillsborough has something in place, but they said it's about to fail. There's really no one out there who's created this system, which is unfortunate because everyone is doing it, is doing school concurrency. The fourth component is the educational facility site planning. And this is what I call Mike Penley's section of the interlocal agreement. And it outlines determining our new school sites, determining how we improve our existing sites, co-location and surplus opportunities between the school district and local governments. In regards to the local government approval process, there's two local government approval processes when we are looking at school sites. So first, the school district selects a site, and then they submit that to the local government, who issues a preliminary determination of consistency. Now, once we've purchased the site and we're ready to build, we have to submit the application to the local governments, and they give us a determination of consistency. Basically, the theory behind this is for the school district to provide as much information as possible to the local governments so that they can make a sound and expedited decision so we can build those schools for the growth that's coming in. We do have in the back of your interlocal agreements, which you probably have, on file somewhere, it has a checklist. The school district has specific things they have to provide in that school site plan. The local governments have a whole separate process for us. Now, we used it for the first time because we're building 3 new schools. So my understanding, again, this is Mike's section, is that we went through the high school first, and it was a little trying, and we figured a lot of stuff out together with the county on, what exactly do some of these things on the checklist mean? And, I had to redo a couple of things. I got to redo some pedestrian plans. But then once we went through the first one, it's been going really well. This having our own process helps out because we're just unique. The school district is required to meet the state requirements for educational facilities. Your planners are all familiar with this SREF. We have different rules for landscaping. We have different rules for parking. So having this separate process has been great. We also recommend that the school district is more involved in any committees that are, planning for parks, recreation, community facilities, trails, any trail committees, because schools are a major attractor. And I know you're all aware that we are having an increase of parents driving to school. We are literally building 1 mile of queuing at our new high school, and worried that we can't get, and sometimes we can't just get the parents to go in there. We'll have queuing, but they won't go in the queue. So if we can work together to co-locate parks, create trails, create even trailheads nearby that maybe parents can meet their kids at, whatever we can do, we'd like to be able to be at the table or have some information on your plans for that. The last section in your interlocal agreement is what I call the local governments part of it. And this is where the local governments needed to amend their comprehensive plans and their land development codes or land development regulations. so that their processes are consistent with what we agreed to in the interlocal agreement, like we just talked about the separate school site plan process. The local governments annually update their capital improvement plan, or their CIE. Each year, they have to also adopt the school district's school capacity program, which includes what we are planning to build within their CIE. Local governments should also update their land development regulations so they incorporate that alternate process we just talked about for reviewing schools. And each local government who is a party to this agreement should have a public school facilities element in their comprehensive plans. So that wraps up my review. For those of you who have seen me up here for the last decade, you understood what I said. For those of you that are new, that was probably a lot of gibberish. So I'm hoping this next part, which is like my State of the Union, kind of clears things up for you. I want to show you some of the data and the products we get out of doing the things in this interlocal agreement. The first thing I want to show you is we share data. This is the school district's school capacity program for 2018-19 in a map form. You don't want to see the actual one. So this shows you in Service Area 1, which is our North County area, that includes the City of Palmetto and Manatee County government. They're both located in Service Area 1. We currently have plans to open Barbara Harvey Elementary School and a new high school in August of 2019 in that service area. Service Area 2 is our east side of the county. This includes Manatee County government and parts of the city of Bradenton. We currently have plans to build 4 classroom wing additions at 4 elementary schools. We have a new middle school that will be opening in August as well. We have plans to put a classroom wing at Lakewood Ranch High School, and we are looking at a K-8 that will probably open up sometime in the mid-20s. I wasn't sure I would say that, 20s, 2020 something. So in Service Area 3, this is our central area that you see in green up here. It's pretty built out. We did build a classroom wing at Johnson Middle School, which is now combined with Wakeland. It is in its first year as a K-8 IB school. Service Area 4 is our west side of the county. We currently have the City of Bradenton, the City of Holmes Beach, the Town of Longboat Key, and Manatee County are all within this service area, so I get their development applications from there. And we don't have anything planned capacity-wise. Now, there's 2 large parcels, well, and another large parcel in Northwest, but right now we have 2 large parcels with some plans to put in somewhere of 9,000 plus homes. We are currently planning on using an existing vacant site that we have near Bayshore High School or the old MTI site to address those. We do not have a site within either of those developments. So that shows you what our service areas look like. This gives you an example of what the school capacity program looks like that we share. Now I want to show you an overview of where we are with our level of service. So this chart shows you level of service by elementary, middle, and high, the 4 service areas, where we're at district-wide, and then at the bottom it shows you what our level of service standards that we all adopted. So for elementary, we adopted 110% level of service. This allows the service area to get a little over capacity so that we can warrant the need for that new school. We can't just build a new school when we're 1 student over. For middle school, it's 105% within the school service areas. And since high schools have more of a regional impact, we look at them district-wide with 100%. So as soon as they hit 100% district-wide, we're saying we need a new high school, which actually just happened. So with that, we're looking at this chart. We have, for elementary in Service Area 1, 101% level of service. That includes Barbara Harvey Elementary School, so that shows you that we're having a lot of growth in this area. We also have 101% in Service Area 4. This does not include those residential dwelling units I just talked about, those 9,000. This is without them. So we're already hitting 101% in Service Area 4. For middle school, we're at 105% in Service Area 3. That was that central corridor. By law, we are required to borrow capacity from the contiguous service areas. So if you look and see, Service Area 2 and Service Area 4 for middle school have capacity available. So when the City of Bradenton or Manatee County, who are in Service Area 3, provide me with an application, I am borrowing capacity from those other areas. And I let them know. So that's why you get those emails and you're like, why am I getting this? This is the City of Bradenton. So high school, bottom line, we're at 90%. And that includes our new high school, and it includes the Lakewood Ranch edition. So we're hitting at 90% right now. This exhibit shows you a summary of the monster. I mean the tracking system. Right now, I'm just showing you a couple of different types of applications. The tracking system is used to, 1, track all the residential development. 2, it tells me all the projected students that are coming from it. And 3, it shows what I have reserved capacity, where I have taken it out of my equation and no one else is allowed to use that capacity. We're looking at grandfathered developments. The law, when it was passed, said that any development of regional impact, or DRI, that was submitted by May 1st, 2005 was automatically vested or grandfathered. In our interlocal agreement, we agreed that we had to make a cutoff date. So any application that had submitted a final site plan or had it approved by June 30th, 2007 is also in this category. These numbers are not in my concurrency calculation. They're vested. So we use them as a planning tool because we know they're out there and they're able to build. Those applications with the final site plan that have been approved are reserved. We have reserved capacity and held it aside for them. Those applications that have submitted a final site plan, we encumber that capacity. So we hold it and we take that out of the application process as well. And they have a certain time to get approved, and once they do, they move to the reserve status. So with that, we're looking at a total of 29,356 dwelling units. That could potentially make 7,476 students. This would fill up 5 elementary schools, 1 middle, 1 high school. We all know that our market cannot absorb that many dwelling units. This is really a planning tool. It helps us determine where we need schools. When is the magic 8 ball, but where we are going to need those schools next based on those school service areas. This exhibit also shows the impact that these developments have on the educational facility system and why we have this interlocal agreement. I now have all this data from everyone so that we can put these numbers together. The last thing I want to show you is a school report. This year we tried to simplify it. It used to be, paragraphs and pages and very formal and, too Miss Planner. So we tried to simplify it. We put a simple checklist on here. Yes, we have a concern or a comment. No, we don't have a concern or comment. I moved up, the projected number of students because I think that's mostly what you guys are looking for anyways. How many students are they going to create? We have what the current school zone is. We provide a preliminary school concurrency analysis saying whether or not that concurrency is going to be triggered, and other information on what impact these developments could have. So you should be seeing these in your planning commission packets. You should be seeing these in your board, council, or commission packets as well. The purpose of these is to help you make your decision. Now, the school district provides this report to the planner. Sometimes we copy the applicant, but that's not part of our interlocal agreement. The school district has absolutely no land use authority. So when we put something in here, we're recommending, requesting, or suggesting that something is done. The local government can either say, oh yes, they're asking for a sidewalk along your frontage of your property, and we see that makes sense, it connects to here. Or the local government say, hey, we're going to be widening this road. We already planned for a sidewalk on there. You don't need to put it on there. It's in our budget. Or they can do absolutely nothing and say, that doesn't warrant it based on our staff. So really, we're just saying this is what we think is going to happen if this development comes in. So again, the purpose of this report is just to identify those impacts and to give it to the local governments and the governing boards to help them make their decision. As always, I appreciate being able to come here and tell you how well our interlocal agreement is doing. At this time, I'll go ahead and open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, Carol?
I just have a real quick question, because I know we got a big item coming up. The interlocal agreements between 6 parties. I remember when it took forever for all the people on this list to get their attorneys to get it back. It took like a year or two. I was involved with it in Holmes Beach. But then I'm sitting here thinking about the reason why, and because I know Bradenton Beach isn't in it, and Anna Maria, and I remember because there was no schools. I'm sitting here, Town of Longboat Key just left, but they don't have a school either, so why did they have to sign an interlocal agreement? Does anybody know?
The City of Holmes Beach has Anna Maria Elementary.
that, yeah.
But the Town of Longboat Key elected to be part of the interlocal
Okay.
agreement. They are also part of Sarasota's interlocal agreement for public school facilities, so they have us both in their comprehensive plan.
So they elected to? That
They
was the
could have
only reason why.
waived, they
Okay.
they still
Thank you.
can, and if we open it up again, they can bring that forward to their.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll open it up for public comment. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak on the annual assessment. Seeing nobody come forward, we'll close public
All right, thank
comment
you.
and we'll move on to the meat of the agenda here, I think. It's brought a lot of people. Or did I miss somebody? Oh, okay, this is Commissioner Benak, consolidation of fire districts.
Needs the microphone.
I'm not going to go to the podium. All right. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for being here. For those of you in the audience that aren't familiar with our Council of Government meetings, we have probably 5 times as many people at this meeting as we do at a normal Council of Government meeting. So quite a turnout, and I understand from talking to some folks, and I thank the people who did reach out to me to talk to me about this. I jokingly said to Vanessa, I said, I guess I just need to put the word consolidation on our agenda every now and then so we get more people to come to our meetings. But I understand that there's been a lot of rumors flying around about why I brought this issue up. And I understand there's a lot of people that are affected. We have a lot of people that work for our fire districts. We have a lot of elected officials that represent the fire districts. And we also have a lot of consultants that work for fire districts. And I know they all are very concerned when we talk about that. And I'll also tell you that I know this much. I am in no way an expert. I've been around for a long time. All this planning stuff I get 100%. Many of you know that I worked in the planning department, worked with many of you on plan review. So that's really my expertise. But now I'm a county commissioner. So I'm going to put one rumor to bed, hopefully, quickly for you all. I have no predetermined agenda or outcome. I didn't come here with any intention of asking for any kind of consolidation. I also know that this is a question for the legislature. It's not a question for the Board of County Commissioners. However, I want you to know that my motives are based on a lot of what you've heard here and a lot of what I think is concerning to this county, and that is the growth that we have in Manatee County. We are seeing significant growth. We've seen significant growth over the years. Yesterday we had some projections that were presented to the MPO. They're talking about almost doubling the growth in the county by 2045. And those projections are made on a straight line projection, but the reality is that we're a very, very popular place for people to come. And when we talk about doubling that, and we know that the biggest issue, the #1 priority in Manatee County is public safety. Public safety. And that includes not only the sheriff, and I will tell you, the sheriff, and everyone has heard this, is having a hard time keeping up with the growth. Luckily, crime is down, but we're having a difficult time just keeping up with the growth of the county. And you don't want me to get started on what causes the growth and what we can do about it, but it does represent a huge portion of our budget. Every year that I've been on the board, since 2012 when I was first elected, any increase that we had in in our revenues, the biggest portion of that increase has gone to the sheriff. Okay? So we know they're challenged. We also know EMS is challenged. We know that EMS is challenged. I've talked about it with some of you about the number of ambulances we have, about how they're, trying to get folks on different kinds of shifts. It's a real quality of life issue for people that work for EMS, and you guys understand that probably better, way better than I do. The fire departments. And my guess, and I could be wrong, because fire districts are independent districts, that people probably know the least about how fire districts work, how they've been set up, their taxing authority. I will tell you, I reviewed a study that the Parish Fire District did. Very interesting, but it's still so hard to follow the methodologies for how your taxing authority and your assessments and who has assessments and who doesn't, and even how they're set. So again, my only goal is to ensure, and my responsibility is to the taxpayers of Manatee County, and I take that responsibility very seriously. So I decided that I was going to look into this and try to understand, why do we do things the way we do? And then I found in my office, and it must be because I have Joe McClash's old office, and I literally didn't throw everything away, but I found a couple studies, and then I heard that Joe actually went down this. So maybe it's catchy in my office. I am going to admit that. So I did look up a couple of studies. The first one that I found, and I'm sure there's probably been many others, these just happened to be in my office, but one that was done in January 1980. It was prepared for the Board of County Commissioners. It's a Manatee County Fire District study. Something that I found out, which may be of interest to some of my fellow commissioners, is the enabling legislation behind the creation of each of the 9, at that time there were 9 fire districts, and of course we know there have been some consolidation, and I'm aware of that too. These were special acts of the Florida legislature. The acts predate the 1968 constitutional revision allowing Florida counties the home rule power to pass local ordinance. And then if you read through the study, you can see that many of our fire districts were established in the 50s and the 60s. And we're in some ways unique in having these fire districts that are independent districts and provide fire service. And you guys all know this, but I'm speaking to some of my commissioners who might not. So in looking through these studies, I did learn a bit. I did learn that this one study, and I will quote that it says, with this came a recommendation. First, it said something that I thought was very relevant today. It says, the inevitable fact remains that the cost of providing municipal services such as fire service continues to rise in the face of continued urbanization and national economic pressures. That was a statement in a 1980 study, but I think it remains the same today. We know it takes more money to hire people, to outfit people, to get all of the equipment that they need. So we know that's probably a reality. This said at the time that Manatee County should explore with the individual fire districts consolidation of certain common services relating to personnel, purchasing, accounting, planning, training, fire code inspection, and building plan review with an Office of County Fire Service Coordinator as a functional division of county government. I have no intention of trying to take anything on in the county government. But I do think we need to have better coordination. And maybe you guys have it, and maybe you have it with our EMS, and I'm just not aware of it. I'm just a county commissioner, so it's entirely possible. I also find the background that, that in the second study, which this is one that was done in 1993, and the impetus for this study was a little bit different. Again, idea of looking at the possibility of consolidating some of your services. This was done in 1992. It was a special study that was emergency session to react to the possible proposal of all independent fire districts in the state of Florida being abolished and returned to county government. And this was being considered in Tallahassee. 1990s, I was working as an independent planner, paid absolutely no attention to this, but I don't know why this came up then. But my point is, I guess, is that we are looking at these issues, and we should be looking at these issues to see. I think that if you look at the mission statement of this group, it talked about standardization within the Manatee Fire Services of training, emergency response, fire inspection practices, life safety code compliance, and communications. This, of course, came up for us when we were approached with West Manatee doing advanced life safety, whatever I can. Excuse me?
ALS.
ALS. Thank you. I wasn't exactly sure what they asked it for, so without looking at my notes. So talks about equity of assessments on residents paying for fire and rescue services. I don't know. I'll tell you, I looked up my own, and I found out I'm in Southern Manatee, and I have one of the highest. Why? I don't know. Maybe I could talk to my Southern Manatee folks. I don't think that people pay that much attention to their ad valorem on fire districts because it's so relatively low on the tax bill. But again, this is something that I think we should at least think about as we go forward, trying to figure out in our budget how to provide the most efficient services in public safety. I really also think that that we need to make sure that we share information, and I think maybe you guys do a much better job of that among yourself. I know that certain districts, I really enjoyed looking at the parish and hearing the story about how parish, I'm not talking to you directly, but how parish, initially I got people asking me from parish saying, there's this big increase, what are you doing that to us for? And I'm like, oh, whoa, we don't have anything to do with that. And then following up with what's been going on the website and hearing from some other folks about how, and obviously today we approved the referendum that's going to be on the ballot. Not hearing from anyone except for Priscilla Trace being very clear, parish works great, leave it alone. Hearing from Commissioner Baugh, leave it alone. East County works great. So I brought you all here with hopefully not false pretenses, but I do think that we need to look at this. I have talked to other people. There were, when the article came out about West Manatee Fire proposing a merger with Southern Manatee, I was like, wow, okay, there's going to be talks about this. There's going to be some discussion. I think it's good. But then it totally died. I never heard anything more about it. So I decided to make this an issue. People have asked me, what is my objective here? My objective is to make sure that we understand the services that we're getting, what the taxpayer is getting, so that I can feel as a representative of Manatee County, and I represent the entire county. It's one of the benefits of being a countywide commissioner. I want to make sure that, that I feel that it's being done in the best interest of taxpayers of the county. So that's about it. But I'd love to hear from all of you, your thoughts. And again, thanks for being here, hanging through our whole meeting. So that's about it. And I'll be glad to take any questions from fellow county commissioners.
Vanessa has a question.
Okay.
Or a statement.
I've been very involved in the East Manatee Fire District from day one, actually before I even ran for office. And that's put me in touch with a lot of the other fire districts. And it's very interesting to look at the different districts and how they're run and how they operate. And the one thing that I have noticed is that they're always there for each other. If one district needs help, another district comes in and helps. I do know, yes, Betsy, I remember hearing about that there might be a consolidation of 2 of the fire districts. I think that they're the ones, the fire districts themselves, are the ones that if they want to look into doing something along that line, it's up to them. Because what I do know is that Priscilla's right. Each fire district knows their district better than any of the others, better than the commissioners do. We don't know the ins and outs of the fire districts like they do. And the other thing is, too, you know, and sitting back, I've sat on this board for 6 years, same as you, Betsy. We were elected at the same time. I've heard from different people. You know, it's generally 2 or 3 of the same people that you hear about consolidating the fire districts. But the bottom line is, we're supposed to make sure our top priority is public safety. These districts have figured it out. I think that the bad part is that some are maybe financed better than others, and that's a shame. Because I know out where I live, and I'm sorry, Betsy, I thought you were in my district, so I just assumed you had East Manatee. I can tell you, I mean, the fire district out in Lakewood Ranch in that area, they've got it going on. I've talked to probably every different fire chief at one time or another. I was helpful. I worked on the ALS thing with Representative Boyd last year. So for me, I understand why you're bringing it up. I know that I heard, you know, you said something about it right after you and I both got elected. I understand that some people in the district feel that by consolidating the fire districts, we'd save money, the taxpayer would save money. And I sit back and I look at, and you brought it up, EMS. You know, no matter what you think or how you do things, the county is the county. It's a government. Government doesn't work as well as when you get out of the way, get government out of the way, and let the people do their thing. And I think if you look at these fire districts, you see, yeah, there's some growing pains because we're having so much growth. But at the same time, a lot of the fire districts have prepared for that and doing very well. And then other fire districts, I know they need a funding source. And I'm hoping that, and I'd be willing to help in any way I could, the funding needs to come about for all the fire districts. You know, I sit back and I'll just use the Tara Bridge for a second. You know, many times I've had people say, well, you know, the Tara Bridge has been on the comprehensive plan since 1989. Well, I mean, that's 30 years ago. I mean, you know, just because it was then doesn't mean it's the right thing today. And the same thing with the fire districts. You know, they have come a long way, baby, in a short amount of time. And I think we need to leave well enough alone. If one thing is working, when you say Manatee County and you say government, if one thing is working, it is our fire districts. So, you know, I would have to agree with Commissioner Trace and say, you know what, leave well enough alone because they're doing just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Misty.
Thank you to Betsy just for bringing this up for discussion and for Vanessa for her wonderful comments. And all that I will add is that I have worked with the fire districts in our community for about 30 years, and my experience has always been fantastic. They are great to work with. But I think it's always important that we always ask, you know, are there resources that we can share? Can we do things better than we're doing right now? Those are questions that we should ask ourselves, not just in this example, but in most examples on a regular basis. So I appreciate all of you being here. You all of the districts do a fantastic job. And, you know, is there anything that we can do better that we're not doing? Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody, any comments? Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
State your name.
Gary Lawson, East Manatee Fire Rescue. Gary Lawson, East Manatee Fire. I know that I have spoken with many on the board over the years, and I remember when Joe McClash brought it up before, and I had the opportunity to speak with Commissioner Bonac yesterday, and thank you for, you know, receiving us, and that was a, you know, good communication and dialogue, and you, in your comments, you discussed, you know, we need better communication, and that's kind of where I want to go. Back in the day, Ernie Padgett used to have a public safety forum where the sheriff, fire representatives, EMS, would sit around a round table and talk about, any kind of, threats, future growth, and all those things. And you guys know that I come from one of the largest fire districts that is really grown with Lakewood Ranch. And years ago, Rex Jensen came to us and asked us to be his fire department. And we knew it was going to be a tough road to hoe there, because we seen his plans, his master plan, and we just knew that it was, and we didn't have a whole lot of money then. And what we did was we went and talked to the community. We went to 10 or 12 associations in the Lakewood Ranch area, and we took our plan and we told them this is where we would like to go with it. And when we were in our first meeting, and I told this to Commissioner Benak yesterday, that they said, listen, we can't support a 3 3/4 millage rate. And I got to thinking, and I said, yeah, you're right. We ended up, leaving that meeting, and before we went to our second one, we capped it at 1 mil. And I personally believe that we need to grow with the district, let the growth pay its way. And that's basically how we've done it over the years. But going back to I know you guys got a lot to do. You guys do a lot of heavy lifting in the county, and but there needs to be probably better communication, and where we can sit down and communicate. And I don't know if that's with the county administrator, whoever that's going to be, but it's probably a good idea that we meet monthly and discuss the issues that come up. And maybe we need to do a better job of communicating. I know everybody's on social media, but some people don't communicate that way. Maybe we need to be sending, newsletters out, about, different things in our district. So I want to respect everybody else's time here, but I really think that we do need to do something, like we used to do when Ernie Padgett was here, and meet monthly. If you're interested.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak? Not at this point. I'll open it up for public comment.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
All right. My name is Brian Gorski. I'm the fire chief for Southern Manatee. I've only been here about 6 years and came from Sarasota. I'm not going to bring that up, but I just want to say, though, that literally coming from where I came from, coming here, that over the past 6-7 years that Manatee County Fire Districts truly have done a lot in regards to your consolidation that you spoke of, because there used to be a lot more other districts and they merged those smaller ones to what you see today. But literally they have come together, and you're talking about things that you don't see or you hear. They've been going on, and it has been communicated to the county, and you're going to actually see some of these co-op agreements, memorandums of understanding, as well as interlocal agreements. They're coming to you by next month, if not, next month, February, that's next week. Those should be on your agendas. And it involves all of us, including the county, for different services that we all agreed and work on together. The topics you brought up, training, they've been doing that for years together, training, monthly meetings, standardized training, standardizing recommended operating guidelines for all the departments to follow. It's there, but going to what Commissioner Lawson said, it's probably that communication that hasn't happened. But there's a lot of good stuff out there. It really is a lot of good stuff that really, that's our weakness, is that we don't put that out there, and that we need to do a better job. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Try this again. Anybody else like to speak? I think I saw a hand down there somewhere. Yeah.
I'll respond.
Hello, I'm Stacy Bailey, the Parish Fire Chief. One of the things that I want to say, and I came to the board during Irma, and the team, the cooperative efforts that we had, you know, we went to other agencies around the state, and I'll tell you that I personally lived it. And the team that's at this table and the organizations that they put together represented Manatee County in an extremely cost-effective manner, professional, and I mean, our services are second to none. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that, because that is a fact. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, you know, again, I'm glad that you all were here to hear some of these presentations. You know, as we try to deal with growth and deal with sea level rise and deal with climate change, things that we've not really talked about, but we're going to be talking about it more. You need to be important partners in that, because public safety, and I include all of you in public safety, is our #1 priority in Manatee County. It's what our biggest budget, the biggest portion of our budget goes to public safety. School board, they got a pretty big part of their budget, but they got to educate people. They've got their requirements. Public safety is ours. And we collaborate with the sheriff, EMS, and the fire districts. But I just would like maybe, and I love the fact that you're willing to communicate a little bit better, and maybe I'd hate to make you all put together a newsletter, but maybe just, like you said, a meeting, and if it's not a meeting, maybe just a report that we could look at to see what kind of things are going on. You know, we had the search and rescue crew before us today at the board, something that I didn't know a whole lot about. But those are volunteers, and I know you probably have a ton of volunteers that still work. I know Mayaka got a lot going on out there. So again, I want to put your minds at rest. I was not trying to take away any of your control, but I'm very grateful to hear about the memorandum of understanding, because, you know, it is a significant amount of money that gets spent throughout this county on fire districts. There's a lot of folks involved, so anything that you can do to show that we're getting the best bang for the buck, I think it'd be great as a commissioner.
Vanessa?
Gotta take it. One thing that I would suggest is, as a commissioner, if you haven't gone out and toured some of our fire districts, you really should, because it's amazing. You'll get a really good idea of what our fire teams can do. And you'll feel good about knowing that they're out there, and whenever you need them, they're going to be there. And that in itself is something that will just make you extremely proud if you represent the county, as I do, and out east. And so I would suggest that the commissioners all get more involved in your fire districts. Get out there, take tours, go meet with them, see the equipment, get them to you know, it's amazing. Carol Whitmore and I one time went out to Mayaka when you got the Beast. You remember the fire truck? You know, when you go out there and you see all this, it really makes you have a much better understanding of what our fire teams do. And what they go through, which is, it's hard. It's very hard work, and it's very serious. And you know, they do everything just the same. We talk about EMS sometimes with what all they have to deal with. Well, I hate to tell you, but the fire districts, the fire trucks, they're out there before generally EMS even arrives. So they're out there every day dealing with the things that come up. And you know, it's an honor for me. I'm very proud of the fire districts. You know, I'm just glad you guys are there, and I'll guarantee you that if the commissioners get out there and they see some of what I have, and you know, and one more thing while we're on that subject. I mean, Brian, you know, if I call, it doesn't matter what fire district. I call and boom, I get a response. You know, you guys just rock. So, you know, I understand Commissioner Benak wanting to bring it up. We do represent the people, not the county. We don't work for the county. We represent the people of the county. And it is our responsibility. But, you know, it just goes to show you, and I think, you know, Commissioner Lawson is right. A lot of it is communication. So I'm excited because maybe now, you know, we commissioners will be more involved in what you're doing and what you have going on, and we'll have a better understanding. And I think that, you know, helps to educate all of us. Thank you.
Okay, Misty?
I'll be fast because we're past the witching hour. But what I will say is there was a theme today as all of you sat through the presentations that we heard. And the theme was that we do more together by collaborating together. And so I think that just, you know, I've always been reminded that every success and every failure either ends and begins with collaboration and communication in a good way or a bad way. And so I feel there's a real opportunity for the fire departments in the county to work together, and sometimes you have to tell the public what we're doing and how we're doing it. And, you know, we get so busy, but sometimes we forget to do that. But I look forward to working with you guys and communicating to the public just what they're getting in Manatee County.
Thank you. Anybody else okay? We'll now open this up for public comment. If anybody from the public would like to come down and talk, they're welcome. Seeing no one from the public, we will close public comment. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming today. I think you all do a great job, and I think we all got a little direction as to how we can even work closer and even communicate better in the weeks and months and years to come. And again, thank you all for taking time out of your busy day. The next item is Ms. Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore? How's that? Is that better?
I'm glad you called her.
I'm just trying to compliment you.
Well, you just did that to me.
So the floor is yours.
Can you hear me, Chris? No. Okay. Hello? Hello? Okay. But until today, and until Joe McClash brought it up last time, this is probably the most people we've had at these meetings. And a little history, just real quick, of why we have these meetings is because years ago, Manatee County was considering making all of Manatee County a chartered government, including the cities were also included. And as you can imagine, and it all kind of started when the city of Bradenton annexed the property almost to Anabria Island, and it was Arvida, and now it's Harbor Isles. And so that caused a little discernation because we weren't all talking, just like kind of what Misty said. So we had a mediation, and what you see today is the result of the mediation. But what also happened is we formed the Council of Governments. But over the past few years, I mean, I've been involved in it since then. I'm not seeing cities here. This was a time for the cities and the county to get together, and it's been county heavy for quite a few years because the cities aren't submitting stuff that they would like to have on the agendas. So until today, after Betsy brought this up, she ruined everything because I was doing real good until she brought this up. But we really don't have a big participation, and like today, we're going to say, yeah, we need to keep having this, but do we really, and is there a better constructive way? I just don't feel, and I've heard from city leaders that haven't been coming in a while because they feel like it's just the county doing it. Well, the county's doing it because the cities haven't submitted something and this is on our calendar. It is all good that we all share the same information, but is this what we should be doing? Because, again, twice, maybe 3 times, we've had this many people here since at least 2005 when I was on the island, or 4. So is this something that we want to continue doing? Is this constructive?
I think you should. I mean,
Who's
it's,
talking?
to me, it's extremely important, and maybe because of the lack of participation in the others, maybe they're unaware of, they're supposed to, you know, produce something on an agenda, but maybe they didn't have any items to put on the agenda. But to me, I think it's important that government gets together, if it's twice every 2 months or every 3 months, but I mean, to me, it's really important.
So when's the last time you guys had been here, unless this agenda was on, and that's my deal.
Last year,
Last
we
year.
went to, because you had 2 of them, and I think you canceled your last 2.
Right.
But we were going to all.
Because nobody submitted anything for the agenda.
Well, I mean, now knowing what we need to be doing, we
Okay,
will.
all right.
I mean, I'm speaking for them,
Yeah,
but
I'm totally okay with it. I just didn't feel like that we should have a meeting just to have a meeting if it's not being productive. Today, again, Betsy ruined it for me.
No.
But again, I'm okay meeting. I'm always about communication and keeping open dialogue. I just want to make sure that it's being constructive from you. Like the city of Bradenton, the participation has been low for a long time now. Palmetto, once in a while they'll come, and, oh, they're all sick, okay. But anyway, I just want to make sure that you all feel that this is something we need to keep doing.
I do. I mean, what about you guys? I think we should.
Gary Lawson, East Manatee. Carol, I think it's good. It's a good thing. I know that, you know, sometimes you have not very much participation, but if you have enough for an agenda, you know, even if it's every, 6 months or as needed, I think it works. But since I was the one that came and asked the county commission for a seat at the table, I have been at every one of these meetings, even though if it doesn't pertain, you never know when something could come up, so.
Well, maybe even 6 months, or we could still do it quarterly. It's just that we would appreciate as a county to have you and all the cities have some input. Because then again, I hear from many elected officials, because I go to all the meetings, except for, Lombok Key, I tend not to go to those. But it would be great if you could bring something up and have participation, because that's what, the whole purpose of this meeting was to keep communication open between the 60 municipalities in the county, and to share and help each other. And I haven't been seeing that in the last couple of years, so if everybody's good with it, I'm fine.
Anybody else have any other comments? My comment, I guess, would only be as far as, continuing them. I think we need to look at the agenda a little closely, because, a lot of the stuff that was presented today is stuff that we as the county commissioners see, in special meetings with the school board or with, T-BARTA and things like that. So it's kind of redundant, not to,
I get it, yep.
type of thing. So it'd be nice to just have fresh items on there that we all could, give type of thing, because quite frankly, it's just like, we're sitting here having heard all this. So it's great for you all, because we like you to have that information, because, the same with, some of the city officials and so forth. But I think we just need to monitor that agenda to make sure that the items that are on that agenda are really kind of new meat for everybody to kind of look at and get a presentation. And maybe we can get the EDC to get a little bigger screen. From sitting back here, I'm going to need some new glasses to be able to read that far away. But
the climate one would have been a good one.
Say your name first.
Brian Gorski, I'm sorry. But the climate one would have been, I mean, that to me is top priority in the nation, in the world.
Right.
And whatever we can do to be part of that, I mean, we need to be involved in that. We do.
Absolutely. I agree. And I thought that was a good presentation. But I'm just saying, I think some of this stuff does tend to be, for us, kind of redundant. So we just need to monitor the agenda. Thank God Betsy put something on there that got everybody's attention today. So again, thank you all for coming. One last time, I'm just going to open it up for any public comment. If there's anybody from the public that has anything that they'd like to say at this point. If not, the meeting is adjourned.